I've got to be honest with you guys. While I have a great deal of enthusiasm by design for most of these videos I do, because that's admittedly one of the main points of all these videos I do, every now and again there's a game or a game series that I'm looking at that I'm just really looking forward to. I'm really, pumped for it. I'm psyched. I'm actually enjoying the process of all the prep work I do. Not just playing the game, of course, not just going into the thing, but analyzing it, discussing it, that kind of thing. I just love it. And if it's not obvious already, for those of you out there who are not getting the point visually here, I am rather looking forward to this. Which is good because I have been not really doing well lately in real life, so I needed something to cheer me up a little bit. Um, Before I actually get into this, there's a couple things I would like to discuss. First of all, the no spoilers rule is going to be in effect as well for this series, for the entire Kingdom Hearts series, just as it was for the Assassin's Creed series. I would like to answer a few questions I've gotten here on the video, if that's okay with you, with regards thereto. I've answered several of these individually with responses to comments or private messages or on the forums, but I know not all of you read any of those things or have done so I'd just like to get this out there to basically all of you who see this. As to my reasoning, you see, there are, in my opinion, two kinds of spoilers, okay? There's accidental spoilers, that is to say, real spoilers, and then there's spoilers you seek out, okay? A spoiler you seek out can be done for many different reasons. Let me give you a direct example. A friend of mine was wondering why I wouldn't shut up about Call of Duty 4 back when it came out. As I've said before, I consider Modern Warfare 1 to be an absolutely incredible game, a work of art in my opinion. And he wanted to know why. And I was trying to describe it without spoilers, and he's like, look, okay, I'm not that much into FPSs in general, okay? I'm not much into this thing. You're going to have to sell me. And I was like, well, I can't sell you without spoilers. And so we discussed it back and forth a bit, and he's like, okay, go ahead and tell me. I've been warned. I'm walking into this knowingly and willingly. What do you got? And so I told him several of the major events of that game, and he was just like, "Oh my God, that sounds incredible!" And then he picked it up and loved it. So that is the kind of thing where you're deliberately seeking it out. I know. I mentioned this especially. Pardon me, because I know several people look at these videos I do sort of as a recommendation thing. Obviously, to some extent or another, I recommend literally every game I look at. However, one of the ways I try to do that is by discussing both its flaws and its pluses, in my opinion, and try to discuss the whys and wherefores as to why I would recommend this game and indeed this game series. So obviously, I would of course recommend the Kingdom Hearts series, but there's a lot of asterisks attached to that. And I know several of you out there would probably want to know several things about the story and the way it unfolds before you actually make that decision. I've seen several commenters who've been like, blah, 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 blah. There were several people who sent me private messages with regards to Assassin's Creed who said, I'd never picked up blah, or I'd never done blah, and it wasn't until watching the second half of your videos where you actually started talking about the spoilers of the game that I decided, okay, that sounds worth it to me. So that's deliberate spoilers, the thing you actually go out and search for yourself for whatever reason. There's plenty of different reasons you can do so. Maybe you don't have any interest in the game. Maybe you never plan on playing it, but you're still idly curious. Maybe you don't intend to get around to it for a while, and you don't want to have to dodge spoilers for forever. That kind of a thing. Now, accidental spoilers are much easier to describe. I can give you two direct examples. I will not tell you what the spoilers are. But two things within the Kingdom Hearts series were spoiled for me. One with Kingdom Hearts 1, and one with the most recent one, the Dream Drop Distance on the 3DS. Both of these things were completely accidental. I was looking up something completely unrelated, or someone just kind of blurted something in the case of the former. And I was just like, ugh. This is one of the reasons I call it my war on spoilers, because accidental spoilers are the hardest kind to avoid and the most damaging. Because all it takes is one slip of the tongue, and boom. As of that moment, the impact is lost. You know what I mean? Especially when you're actively trying not to do that, not to have anything spoiled for you. You actually want to enjoy it as you go. One of the problems I have, and this is going to sound like bragging, I apologize, but this is true, is my mind can figure out stories usually within about 10 minutes of any given movie or book or game. I'm very good at figuring stuff out like that. I have learned over the years to basically turn that part of my brain off so I can enjoy it, so that when the twist happens, I'm like, that kind of a thing. Because I want to enjoy it, because I enjoy that sort of thing. That's me, that's my opinion. And so, that being said, it should then make sense why literally one word being misspoken can literally just completely turn on that part of my brain, and then it will start piecing things together, and I'm like, dang it. You follow me? This is exactly what happened with Dream Drop Distance. The major plot point of Dream Drop Distance was spoiled by a single word and one picture, and that's all it took. I'm sorry, I'm still a little aggravated about that fact, to be completely honest with you. That is why I mention no spoilers in the comments, yet I'm okay with, obviously I'll be discussing some things after a point of no return within my videos, and why I'm okay with you talking about things on the forums, because it's clearly labeled, or in private messages, as several of you were doing with the Assassin's Creed series. I'm okay with that. I would like to discuss these games, especially without the spoiler warning as a barrier. But, and this is especially important in this series particularly, there are several people out there I know personally who have not finished this series. They've started playing it, and they're only so far into it. This is a long series that spans several consoles, I might add. So, several people would like to know, what I think about game A, B, and C, but not D, F, and G. You follow me? That's why, and I hope that you guys will understand this. One thing I do have to say, though, you guys are awesome. In all of the Assassin's Creed series, I only had to delete a single comment throughout the whole thing. That's all I had to do, one guy. And I was really pleased with that. I didn't expect things would go that well, so definite thumbs up on that. Now, let's talk about Kingdom Hearts. Let me get the biggest point out of the way right now. For those of you who are fully unaware for whatever reason, Kingdom Hearts is Disney plus several of the good people who still work at Square, okay? And I do say Square in this case specifically. Yes, I know they were already Square Enix by the point in which the Kingdom Hearts series got anywhere, but no, you follow where I'm going with this? The Kingdom Hearts series has literally been the last bastion of quality coming out of Square Enix for a while, in my opinion. In my opinion, I've already talked about this. I'm not going to get into that. But, well, actually, let me take a step back. Okay, I'll get to that in just a second. Forgive me. One of the things I was most worried about when doing the Assassin's Creed series is that is a very divisive topic. I have heard a lot of, it's one of those volatile topics, Several people have varying opinions about it, varying differences of thought and feeling with regard to that series, and I saw that a great deal. Now, as usual, again, you guys are awesome, so most of that was literally just plain old discussion of, yes, this is good, or I think this is bad, and here's why, dot, dot, dot. But at the same time, what I was worried about was I was going to get random people who, are not regular viewers or whatever, and they're just looking at it and be like, oh my god, I can't believe he's praising this game. That clearly sucks! Things like that. I was just worried about that sort of thing. And I did get a few comments like that, whatever. There's a similar worry kind of hanging over my head with this series, because this is another one of those divisive series that I've heard a lot of different opinions on. Probably the only game I've ever looked at that it probably has more screwed up opinions about in both directions is World of Warcraft. Go figure. But point being, I just want to say right here and now that, as usual, I really don't have a problem with it if you have a differing opinion than me, as long as you're willing to be civil about it, As long as you're willing to be like, oh, well, I disagree with you, Arshank. I think this game is the worst game in the known universe. Here's why. Da, da, da. Things like that. I'm with that. I really am. Recently, a gentleman and I had a discussion in brief about the Elder Scrolls games, and our opinions were basically completely opposite of each other for all intents and purposes. But at no point did it ever devolve into an argument. It was just a discussion and a little bit of a debate as to why, I like that. I know I say this often, but I feel repeating myself is at least somewhat necessary, especially in the intro videos, because I know not everyone watches every one of my videos, especially with the daily format. And frankly, I want to emphasize the point. So, as usual, just please be civil. That is literally all I ask. Really. Other than the no spoilers thing, obviously. Now, like I was saying, Kingdom Hearts, really getting to the series. I should make a timestamp. What are we at here? 9 minutes, okay. Kingdom Hearts is Disney plus the good parts of Square, okay? What's left of the good parts of Square, because so many people have left the company entirely now and made other games, which are awesome, I might add. Any of you who haven't seen Last Story, you should definitely pick it up, IMO, real quick. That hurdle is actually bigger to go over than it probably sounds like for most people. If you do not like Disney movies, especially the classics, Aladdin, Lion King, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, that whole era, I could name several others, but that whole era of Disney, if you don't like that, if you actively dislike it, is what I'm saying here, you are going to have difficulty getting into this series, period. Now, That being said, I do know two people personally who actively dislike Disney who like the series, and the reason why is, in a nutshell, Kingdom Hearts is not about Disney. Disney has a fairly large percentage of screen time, all things considered. But if you look at the story, if you look at the actual plot and the setting, Disney is the garnish at best. It's something that certainly is tied in with the story, certainly interacts with it. But as far as Disney characters, which I would consider major characters within this setting, I can only think of two off the top of my head. Debatably three. That would be Maleficent, who is a magnificent villain in this series. Mickey Mouse, who is awesome. For those of you who don't really know what I'm talking about, Mickey Mouse is basically the equivalent of Yoda in this series. And I mean that very sincerely. I don't mean that as a joke, you know. No, he really is. He is the guardian, the wise old master who has been doing this for basically forever. Now, obviously, he's not always that because there's some time thing, but you get the general point. And the third character, which is debatable, would be Pete, and I would very much say that is still debatable, but. Because while he's certainly amusing and he certainly bumbles around, ultimately he is basically an artifact of Maleficent. He is there to be comedy, just like Donald and Goofy. And you'll notice I didn't mention Donald and Goofy, and that's because while they have something to do with the overall theme of Kingdom Hearts, which I'll get into in just a second, ultimately, with regards to the story, the only thing they're responsible for is getting the ball rolling. That's actually not even true. They got the ball rolling in Kingdom Hearts 1. The story actually got rolling much earlier. And I don't want to talk about it in details, but let's just say that Birth by Sleep, which occurs first chronologically, had a lot more to do with the entire events of the series getting going than Donald and Goofy did. You follow me? Now, let me make it clear, very much so, right here and right now. I like Disney. I do. I'm sorry. Well, I'm not sorry because I do. This is just the truth. This is my opinion. I have been a fan of Disney movies for some time. I admit some of that might have to do with the fact of my particular age group. When I was growing up, these movies that I mentioned were pretty much cutting edge as far as cartooning goes. I still remember watching, Sleeping Beauty and whatnot. I remember, what's that first one? I actually can't remember. There was one Disney movie that I saw in the theaters first, but I'm talking about the older films as well. Robin Hood, for example. And of course Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. I already mentioned that one, and Cinderella. That's a good one. I think Cinderella actually was the first one I saw in the theaters. I could be wrong about that. Point being, I grew up in an era to actually, I shouldn't say an era. I'm not trying to be elitist. I'm just saying I believe that my particular age group was in a good time to enjoy Disney movies because they were coming out when I was actually young, and then when I got a bit older, they actually advanced and got better. Again, the golden era I just referred to, the ones I was just talking about, Aladdin and Lion King and all those, all happened when I was a good deal older and could actually appreciate them more. You follow me? On top of that, I do have to be honest, the whole children thing, that probably affects it some, but at the same time I would argue not really because what they like to watch is stuff I can't stand, so, whatever. Moving on. If you can't overcome that hurdle, or you have difficulty overcoming that hurdle, be warned, okay? Now, the major theme of all of the Kingdom Hearts series could be described as Final Fantasy VI. No, seriously, though, in all honesty, Final Fantasy VI's main theme is the bonds of fellowship, right? The togetherness, the way in which we are not alone, the connections that we have, whether it be as a friend or a coworker or a leader or a subservient or a lover or a father or a daughter or a granddaughter or a grandfather, all of these things that hold us together and keep us together as people and bring us together, and that overwhelming message of we are in this together. And the ultimate contrast with Kefka, as I've talked about in my FX6 review, in detail, reviews, I should say at this point. All of that is effectively the theme of Kingdom Hearts, and that is part of why I like it, to be honest with you. It is hope against adversity. And I'll explain why in a little bit more in a second here when I get to my next point. But throughout the whole of the series, one of the most strongly this theme of the fact that we are connected, not only is used in the standard literary sense, but due to the setting, due to the mythos or mythos, if you prefer, of the setting, this is kind of literal. The actual literal connections of people. I can't talk about details about that without actually spoiling things, but those of you who know the series know what I'm talking about, especially with regards to, say, Recom, or just Chain of Memories if you prefer, and the events that happened as a result of that, and the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2 and the results of that. You get where I'm going with that, if you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you probably are just like, huh? That theme is something that I know other people have a problem getting over with because it is a kind of well, Disney theme actually. If you think about it, it is a very, friends are my power kind of a thing. But it is my personal opinion that, with a few exceptions, it does approach the subject matter appropriately enough. You know what I mean? It does actually. It's not to the level of FF6. Nothing is the level of FF6 with regards to storytelling style, in my opinion. But it does nevertheless approach the subject matter appropriately. It does actually try and get across the fact that this is a serious matter. That this isn't just friends for life and friends can overcome everything. No, it is actually the fact that the only reason I can manage to keep going in the face of total adversity and the fact that I've lost everything in my life is the fact that I know I'm not alone. That is powerful. And that's one of the things the series is very good at. One of my favorite quotes, this is not a spoiler, this is actually in the first game, is at a point at time in which the main hero, I'm not going to spoil several of those things, but point being, the main hero is in a bad way. Sora is down and literally refusing to give up, and the gameplay, I can't wait to talk about it, but the point is, he is basically at his lowest low. He is worse than he was when the game started. And yet he refuses to give up. And he gives this wonderful speech about how my friends are my power and I will not yield. And even though it's coming from the voice of Haley Osment, or however the heck you say his name, and even though he still had the thing going on, it's this child saying this, it nevertheless comes across. You understand where I'm going with? This is a kid, a child, who is refusing to give up in the face of very real, very serious danger. Awesome, you know? Now, I will admit the series gets rather cheesy at times. I have said in the past that I kind of enjoy that particular sort of kind of bad joking, what I like to call the Dragon Quest style of humor. Anybody who's played any of the Dragon Quest, especially the more recent ones from like 8 and 9, as well as the remakes of 4, 5, and 6, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Dragon Quest has this very particular pun bad joke, just kind of silly humor kind of thing. Another example that would be Tales of Graces, I believe is the one that just came out on the PS3. Another excellent example of that kind of bad humor that I actually get into. I enjoy that. So I do have to, again, give you a warning. If you don't like that kind of humor, you're just gonna be groaning at a few scenes. I will give you a specific example. Early on in Kingdom Hearts 1, there's a scene where Donald and Goofy are basically saying, we have a ship, we have a spaceship, you can travel on it, but and Goofy's basically, you can't come on like that. No sad faces, no frowniness, and stuff like that. So give us a smile. And then Sora, who is really depressed at this time, gives this incredibly cheesy, incredibly darky-looking smile. I cannot possibly emulate it. And Donald and Goofy just laugh at him because he looks ridiculous. And then Sora actually is cheered up a bit by this because they're not laughing at him per se. They're just like, oh wow, that's so silly. You understand where I'm going with this? That kind of thing. Again, is something you kind of have to either like or hate or tolerate or whatever. But I figured fair warning. What was the next point I was going to get to? Shoot. I do have this problem occasionally, especially when I don't actually have notes, because this is literally being done on the fly here, because I just felt in the mood, I felt in the mood to just sit down and talk, and put on my Heartless shirt and be like, rawr. Other things about this series that have to be taken into account. The series has been getting better in my opinion, basically every game. I will not actually say which one I think is my favorite per se, because shrug basically. It's harder to decide than that, especially since for all intents and purposes you could consider the whole series as one game, the same way you could consider the Lord of the Rings trilogy one movie or the original Star Wars one movie, things like that. But that being said, they have been improving on it. One of the problems with the earlier games is they had this thing where, in order to save rendering power, to summarize, they would have the characters and they would just have a decal here, which would be like doing the mouth animation, right? However, they also have fully 3D rendered things where the mouth would actually be here and they would actually have the eyes and the face. And whenever it shifts between the two, which it will often do in the middle of a single scene, it looks really odd. Even Kingdom Hearts 2 did this. And every time I see the decal thing, I just kind of cringe a little bit. I shouldn't say that. That's not true. It just looks so much worse than the actual fully 3D render thing. I wish they could do that, constantly. And they have been getting better about that. Each successive game has had more of the full, facial animations thing than the previous one. So that's good. Um, I was actually going somewhere with that. Right. I was talking about this whole uplifting message and whatnot. One of the interesting things about this series is each individual game ends, at best, on a bittersweet note, and at worst, it is genuinely just heartrendingly depressing. That's an interesting artifact about this game. Again, this is very Dragon Quest in its own right. For those of you who have played the Dragon Quest, you know that those games don't really pull their punches when it comes to things. Dragon Quest V is still arguably one of the most horrifying events I've seen happen in a game, um, personally. Personally speaking, one of the ones that certainly impacted me the most. My God, and I'm not going to say what it is in case you haven't played it, but it happens pretty quickly, and then it happens again, and then it happens again. Anyways, oh my God, again, it's a very Dragon Quest thing in that sense. Kingdom Hearts, it's like, and here's Disney and all this stuff, and then something just absolutely horrifying happens. And it's like, whoa! You know what I mean? And again, all the games tend to end somewhat. The only exception to this, off the top of my head, is actually Kingdom Hearts 2. The only game in the series that has ended on a decisive, not bad note. You know what I mean? Which is amusing when you come down to it. It could be debated, and I don't mean bad as in bad quality. I mean just bad as in, in a good way. Probably the strongest example of that, in my opinion, is both the first game and as far as bittersweet endings, 358 over 2, which is just horrifyingly depressing. Especially the whole finale is just horrifying depressing, and then it ends, and it's just like, oh. And Birth by Sleep. Now, I won't be saying any specifics here for obvious reasons, but those of you out there who know what I'm talking about can probably extrapolate where I'm coming from on this. It is a strange tonality because that whole hope against diversity thing is kind of what I'm talking about. While this message of we are not alone, it's again, this is why I mentioned the whole it's not just hey, we're friends and we can overcome everything. No, it's we're friends and things are horrible. You understand? Things are bad and things are getting worse and so many lives are being ruined and so many places are being destroyed and we're basically just barely holding on, and the only reason we are holding on is because we have each other. You understand? This is why I mentioned this as part of the previous point, or rather the previous point, because I forgot about it. The whole point is not just that we are not alone, but that life kind of sucks. You know what I mean? Like it is for all intents and purposes, in my opinion, the Kingdom Hearts series is a tragedy, if I were to classify it. And one of the things I really enjoy is the fact that it does those two sides of the coin. It is a horribly dark, tragic game. It doesn't go into anything, squicky or horrifying, in my opinion, but it or genuinely bad that that I would just not want to have anything to do with. Nothing real life bad. It is very fictional bad, and if you understand the difference there. But at the same time, there are lighthearted moments. There are sequences where it's just like, wah, and then in many cases we get to see several of these lighthearted people, some of these lighthearted areas be destroyed, corrupted, consumed, and the heroes just kind of stop, don't give up, And there's several scenes that unfortunately suffer from translation and voice acting issues. That is very unfortunate because you can see in many cases what the original scene was supposed to be. There's one in Kingdom Hearts 2, I don't remember exactly where it happens, where Sora has just had the rug pulled out from under him like the third time, and he's like, I'm never gonna find what I'm looking for. I'm never gonna succeed at what I'm trying to do. Why am I even trying to keep going? And then Donald and Goofy are like, oh no, don't worry, we'll cheer you up, we'll help you keep going. And it's not working because he has just been mind screwed, 6 times in a row at this point from his perspective. And I have to say from his perspective because he actually isn't even aware of one of the mind screws that happened to him. Poor kid. You get where I'm going with all this. And it is a very emotional game series in my opinion. While the overarching plot, and it is indeed, make no mistake, one plot for the whole series to date, is awesome and very logically engaging for me. I have to be honest, it is the feeling that this game engenders with me, which ultimately, when it comes down to the end of it, really pulls me into this series. The heart-rending moments, the heart-warming moments, the moments of awesome. There's a whole, for those of you who go to TV trips, there's a whole section called Crowning Moments of Awesome, and there's a section for Kingdom Hearts. I don't recommend reading that if you don't want spoilers, by the way. But if you have already seen the series or don't care, by all means glance at them, because there are several moments of just awesome in these games, and that's a nice mix in my opinion. Now, there's two final things I'd like to talk about with regard to this series. One is semi-serious, and one is extremely serious. I'm going to leave the extremely serious thing for last, because I'm not even sure if I should say it or not, to be honest with you. The semi-serious thing is Kingdom Hearts has a very cool factor. I've spoken before about how, in general, most animes I watch I don't enjoy, and I have given many a try. Part of why is because too many animes, in my opinion, go for that weird for weird's sake thing. I've talked about this before. Several games, especially Japanese games, but not limited to, also do that kind of same thing, weird for weird's sake. And I don't care for that. I don't care for non sequitur just to be non sequitur. I don't find that interesting. That's just my opinion. What I do like is the aspect of anime that is cool. One of the things I did enjoy about Bleach, for example, even though I don't enjoy the series in general for many reasons, is the fact that they actually bothered to have something of a cool factor in several of the instances, in several of the parts of the show. Um, and I'm actually another series that does that is I can't think of Helsing. Helsing. I wanted to say Alucard, but that would be the guy's name. Helsing is another example that every now and again, especially with regards to the guns, tries to have just a cool factor. Kingdom Hearts is very much about the cool factor. In the presentation, in the style, in the cutscenes, of course, it's cool. Not to the level of, say, Devil May Cry, but certainly leaning in that direction, right? Leaning in the sort of, I'm just doing incredibly awesome stuff all the time kind of a thing. But, and this is the real point I wanted to make here, Kingdom Hearts is the relative successor to Secret of Mana, okay? Now let me fill in the gaps a little bit here, but I'd just like to say if you've liked Secret of Mana, you probably already know where I'm going with this. Secret of Mana was kind of innovative. Obviously, it wasn't the first. Final Fantasy Adventure, aka Seiken no Tetsu 1, was the first. But Secret of Mana was the one that got popularized. Secret of Mana is the one that exploded the whole Mana series. And we still haven't gotten Seiken no Tetsu 3 over here in the States. I don't get it. I want to give you my money. Please, give me my game. Um... And where's my Secret of Mana port or remake that isn't on the phone? I digress. Secret of Mana had a combat system, for those of you who are unaware of it, it was very clearly an RPG, but it was very much an action RPG. The combat was very Zelda if you had actual equipment, spells, and levels, if you kind of follow where I'm going with this. And it was very fluid and very motion, but the point was you actually had to do things. You couldn't just... It wasn't menu-based, it wasn't just attack. Or, you cast a spell or something like that. You actually had to go... This is one of the things I liked most about the Devil May Cry series, and series is like that, such as God of War also comes to mind, for example. And another one whose name I can't think of it, I was just talking about it with a friend. Anyways, I like actually being the guy who is, me, the player, being the person who is doing the combo. It's a very fighting game style thing when you get down to it. That's one of the things I liked about Dissidia as well, for example. You can't just hit attack. You can't just hit, menu. Not that I'm saying there's nothing wrong with that, per se. But I enjoy the fact that when I attack you and then hit this button, I'll do this thing, and I'll do this other move, which will do this, and then I'll have to back up, and then I have to get closer because you just did this one attack, and then I gotta dodge away. I like doing that. And Kingdom Hearts is, in my frank opinion, probably the best action RPG I've ever played, if you count the whole series as an aggregate, with Secret of Mana being an extremely close second and or tie to that. Just Secret of Mana by itself, not the rest of the series, just right out there, because I love that game. But anyways, point being, that is a very excellent part of the cool factor, because you're not just cool in cutscenes. You're not just cool in, because you do this cool attack. You are cool because you do this cool attack. You make this combo work. Now, in the early games, especially Kingdom Hearts 1, for example, that's not really true. All you do is set up your slots and you dodge and then you attack, right? There's some cool factor, but not a huge amount. As the series progresses, that gets more, probably reaching its zenith, in my opinion, with the most recent one, Dream Drop Distance. However, Dream Drop Distance is also extremely difficult to get used to the format, so I will go ahead and actually give the prize to Birth by Sleep, in which you can do just amazing, incredible things, especially if you have yourself set up right, and blow through stuff and look awesome doing it, because you are doing it. You follow me? Very excellent type of gameplay, and one of the things I really enjoy about this series. Now, I actually lied. There's one other thing I want to talk about before I get to the serious point. I really meant to mention this towards the beginning. Hopefully, you guys are still with me. If you're not, apologies. I didn't actually, as with the Assassin's Creed series, I didn't actually really get in at the ground floor of this. Originally, the woman I was with at the time was very much into the game and was playing through it. It was actually the first video game she'd ever really picked up, if you follow me. And she was rather enjoying it. And all I knew about it was the name Kingdom Hearts and something to do with Disney and Square. That was literally the 100% of the information I had available to it. I was at a period of time which I wasn't really following the news, gaming news and whatnot, and I was falling a bit behind, real life concerns, that kind of a thing. So, I wasn't really on the ground floor. My literal first real ex- uh, exposure to Kingdom Hearts was when she asked me to come over one day because she was fighting Ursula. Those of you who've oh my god, spoiler alert. No, I'm kidding. Ursula's in the game. Oh my god. The very first fight against Ursula, of two, when you're fighting her with the cauldrons. Now, granted, I'm a gamer, so I figured out what she had to do within a matter of minutes. But that's not why I bring this up. I bring this up because that was literally my first exposure to the game, was the Little Mermaid level while you're fighting Ursula for the first time. And then I sat out and watched it, and she did the rest of the thing and fought Ursula too. Now, I mention this because one of the things I've talked about before is the difference between good graphics and aesthetically pleasing graphics, okay? I'm going to talk about this a little bit in brief here. Um, Super Mario Bros. 1 is a game that I cannot look at and enjoy anymore. Obviously, at the time, I didn't know any better, but as time went on, those graphics have aged poorly. You understand? Super Mario 64, the original version, not the DS version, graphics aged poorly. Okay? I'm not saying they're bad games. I'm just saying that those graphics, however good they were at the time, were were designed in a way that they didn't stay appealing. And this is a matter of aesthetics and therefore by definition opinion, right? It's Now I stress this because there is a huge difference between aesthetically pleasing and good graphics. There are many MMOs out there right now that have better graphics than WoW. Superior graphics, right? But it is my opinion in many of those cases, which I'm not going to name specifically because I don't want to get this about this, that I find WoW to be superior graphically speaking because it is aesthetically pleasing to me. You follow? Let me give you a more direct example and one that's a little less contentious. Super Mario 1, like I just said, did not age well. Super Mario Bros. 3, even the 8-bit version back on the NES, which I still have, that still looks appealing to me. I still enjoy the graphics of that game to this day. Another good example, Mega Man. Basically in general, but especially Mega Man 2, for example, is a game that I still enjoy the appearance of. I still like that. I still think it looks cool. I'm with it. You follow me? Some graphic types, and this is really a matter of opinion, like I said, age better than others. Let me give you another example here, real quick. Baldur's Gate 2, in my opinion, has not aged particularly well. It is not bad. It's not nearly as bad as some of the other examples I just gave, but it is not a game that has aged especially well. While at the same time, another game I could mention, say Planescape Torment, or well, actually, you know what? I don't actually want to get into this because those are too similar. Let's use a more clear-cut example, okay? Neverwinter Nights 1. Its graphics have aged incredibly poorly. They do not look good to me anymore. They barely looked good at the time. That is a game that as much as I enjoy it, and as much as I praise it, the graphics have not aged well. Neverwinter Nights 2, which is still it is a little more modern, but still an older game at this point in time, have aged a lot better. Something like that. You get the general point I'm going with, right? Now to wrap this all up, while the graphics of Kingdom Hearts are not actually all that good, all things considered, they are incredibly aesthetically pleasing to me, and that first visual reference of watching the Ursula fight and watching the next few cutscenes pretty much hooked me right there visually. I tend to be a kind of a visual person in general. I've admitted this before, and an audio person as well. I'll get to that in a second too. I guess I should talk about that too. I keep remembering those additional things to talk about, but the game is very enjoyable to look at, in my opinion, and it's only been getting better, especially when they actually do the full 3D phases thing, like I mentioned earlier. Now, part of that is because Disney translates surprisingly well. Disney cartoons translate surprisingly well to the 3D graphics like that. Part of that is because they've got this semi-pseudo cell shading thing. It's not actually cell shading. It's a different type of thing going on, which looks quite good, all things considered. Part of that is because it is very Nomura. Tetsuya Nomura is one of the people I credit most of the good stuff with Kingdom Hearts in. Not all of it, of course, but he's a very good director and a very good character designer, and he has a very particular style to him. Now, if you don't like his style, there's nothing for it. But to give you an idea, he designed Setzer way back in FF6. To give you an idea, that's when he really started working with Square full time, and he does interesting character design, and even the characters who are Kingdom Hearts characters, Sora and Riku and all the others, look interesting to me in this setting, despite the fact that it is still basically designed on the Disney format. You follow me? And that's one of the things I really do enjoy, especially given the fact that most of the epic boss fights actually look and feel epic because of this whole design choice, right? And again, the cool factor is added to the fact by the fact that you can pull off sort of stunts, which you couldn't really do with a more humanoid, more realistic model. Um, Yoko Shimomura. I do greatly apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly because she is arguably my second favorite composer of all time. That woman does incredibly good music, and it's rare that I find a song of hers I do not enjoy. She is responsible for the music of the Kingdom Hearts series. It's arguably where she got her big break. Some people would probably debate that. I would not. I do think this is where she started going. She's done several other games as well. Xenoblade, for example, she did like 3 songs in that. She did Super Mario RPG, I believe. I don't remember what else. She's done several songs, several games, soundtracks, but she is incredible. She is what I call Nobuo 2. And there's been a rumor going around for a while that I've never actually bothered to follow up on, that Uemitsu, who at this point was in his twilight years, basically helped Shimomura flesh out her style and really get going with her own particular format, because the two have an extremely similar composing style. When you listen to it, when you analyze the songs, the two are very analogous as far as thematic points and counterpoints and the way they're designed. So I like her music a lot, and I cannot argue that several of my favorite songs of all time are by her and in this series. In my Zero playlist, the No Really, these are my favorite songs of all time. There are actually several by her and several from this series. And one of the things, if you'll forgive me for going into this a little bit more, is that she is really good at well, there's 2 things. One is she's really good at atmospheric music. The End of the World comes to mind from Kingdom Hearts 1. Beautiful. The I can't remember the name of the song, but the song for The World That Never Was in Kingdom Hearts 2. Just perfect. Perfectly haunting and offbeat, and just kind of really gets the point across. Extremely well done in that case. But the other thing that she really does extremely well, probably my favorite songs of hers, are battle music. She does incredible battle music. One of the favorite songs of all time. It's like what up there with 2 other songs in fighting for the number 1 spot is the 13th Dilemma from Kingdom Hearts 2, which is incredible. And oh my god, I love that song. She does incredible boss music. She does incredible fight music. It really is just impacting, and it's only been getting better lately. I mean, several of the songs from Birth by Sleep and from DDD are just so. You probably can understand why I got into this game so much with such a simple exposure, because she was just playing this game, and so I wasn't actually playing the game. What I was seeing was that this was Secret of Mana gameplay style, with graphics I was really enjoying, with music I was really enjoying. I was basically hooked from the moment I saw this game. I didn't actually get to pick it up for some time later. Actually, it was a friend's copy. It was the next time I actually got to play it, like 2 years down the line, all things considered. But when I finally did, I was just like, yes, because I was already kind of in the mode for it. You know what I mean? And I just felt like sharing that. Okay, I'm finally done talking about everything else. Let's talk about something serious, okay? And the shirt I'm wearing is, obviously I like this shirt, but it's also kind of relevant to this point. One of the things I have never fully understood is the Faustian Bargain, okay? This may sound like a spoiler, just giving you kind of a warning. This isn't a spoiler for Kingdom Hearts, it's actually a spoiler for Forgotten Realms. Okay, that's enough time. Zaz Tom, or how the heck you say his name. Zaz Tam, I believe, actually. Made a deal with somebody for like 1,000 years of absolute power, and then, he gets to spend the rest of eternity in bad ways and bad places. That kind of bargain and I mean this with all sincerity. This is why I say this is a serious topic. Me, the person here that is sitting here talking to you, does not understand that at all. That makes literally no sense to me. That's like you walking up to me and saying, "Hey, Arshangai, would you please pound a nail into your hand?" Sure. It makes absolutely no comprehension to me. I don't get it, right? That being said, there is an allure to the way that Kingdom Hearts approaches the Faustian bargain. Throughout the Kingdom Hearts series, and this may be a little bit spoilery, probably not, but I just thought I'd mention it, there are several different ways that people tend to reach out towards the darkness and try to actually obtain the darkness, be used by the darkness, use the darkness. It's a very common theme throughout the series, and one of the big reasons for that, again, goes back to that whole thing I talked about earlier about togetherness. Most of the people who use the darkness are not. Now, one of the things the series makes very clear, especially as it goes on, is that the darkness is not inherently bad. This is a very light side, dark side thing over on Star Wars before Lucas was an idiot. Um, the dark side was not inherently evil. It's just that it was more passionate and quicker, and thus the people who are already evil are more likely to get more evil or be honest about their evil than they were before. That's why it was falling to the dark side. It wasn't that the dark side was corrupting them. It was that they were now using something that was encouraging something that would be called corruptive. Does that make any sense? It's a fine definition, I admit, but the overall point is that you could use the dark side and still be a good guy. Similarly, we do see in this series that you can use darkness and still be good or neutral. Um, more good, more good. The good example is better than the neutral example. I'm not going to name names, but the general point here is that the darkness is so tempting of a thing, and I have to freely admit, if the Kingdom Hearts setting, if its rule set existed in real life, I personally would be extremely tempted by that, because the whole idea is the concept of gaining the power of freedom. That's really what it comes down to. The freedom to do, the freedom to leave, the freedom to be. I mean, that is what, Riku's big motivation was, and that's not a big spoiler. That happens within, like, the first 3 minutes of the first game. I don't think that's a spoiler. You know, that was his big motivation, and he's not the only one who had that particular motivation. I'm not going to name names now, but you get my point here. There is something incredibly appealing about the idea of just basically, how did he put it? There's a direct quote about a character whose name I'm not going to give, which basically is, "I stared into the darkness and was not afraid, and the darkness took a part of me, and I took a part of it, and in the process I became the better." I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but you get the general concept there. There is something very appealing about the idea of what is effectively a Faustian bargain, yet actually isn't. Because if you do it right, if you're careful, you can do it well, and you could gain for the better for it. And if you do it poorly, you're probably in a worse off state for it. But at the same time, that still strikes me as something that is more appealing. I would rather become a heartless. I would rather become a nobody than make a bargain with a demon and say, "Yes, you can destroy my soul for the next several years." You follow me on this? And that also ties into the next point. I have mentioned before that I use the term nobody nowadays, ever since it was introduced to me by Kingdom Hearts 2. I use that term because that concept is something that I have had in my mind for a long time prior. It's something that's always interested me in its own vague way. I've actually designed several characters who could be described as nobodies in retrospect before Kingdom Hearts ever existed. You follow me? And as I've mentioned before, the Bastion, which is a part of my overall Imperium storyline, has existed since before Kingdom Hearts did. So again, I was not taking. I took this name because it was so appropriate, but I was not taking the concept. The concept was something that already existed. Does that make sense? I'm kind of trying to defend myself, but I want to get across the point that that's something I was already interested in. That was something that already engaged me because of the way I myself am. I've mentioned before, whenever I'm more serious, that I have trouble feeling. There are things that do make me feel, don't mistake me, but in general I tend to be kind of a blank slate, just kind of robotically going through the motions kind of thing, 90% of my work time, for example. But the idea of being a being like that, someone who is effectively a shell, someone who can feel, someone who does feel, but that's the rarity, that's the exception, not the rule. is something that has always appealed to me because that's kind of the way I've always felt, to be completely honest. I'm not trying to be emo or, oh, woe is me, angsty or anything. I'm not lamenting it. It's just who and what I am. You follow? And as a result thereof, the whole nobody thing just sang out to me. I was so psyched for Kingdom Hearts 2 when I started learning about more and more about it and how it worked and the characters and the plot and the whole nobody concept, because that was just it almost hit the nail perfectly on the head. And I only say almost, well, I don't want to spoil it, but let's just say if you look at the series as a whole, it did actually hit the nail perfectly on the head. That's all I'm going to say about that. Um, and so I find that absolutely incredible. It's one of the reasons that I still use that nobody name structure. The formula with adding the X for several of my characters, Zaydenra comes to mind, for example, and Zanej, Zaylaner, that kind of a thing, Noxaith, Branix. All these characters use that nomenclature now because it appealed to me so much. And I have to be honest, that is one of the bigger appeals for the series in general to me. And I know I'm not alone on that. The Organization 13 in general and the Nobodies in general have quite a bit of a fan base, all things considered. I know several people who have nobody tattoos, for example. And in fact, actually, if you will give me 1 second, I should have gotten this first. Whoa, shoot. Okay, hang on. Okay, I don't have the other one handy. It's elsewhere. But I actually do have two necklaces that I purchased, custom made. You've probably seen me wear some of these back in my older videos. There's this one, of course, which is fully awesome. But I also have one of the same style and make, which is a nobody symbol, because that kind of a thing appeals to me. In fact, actually, let's really go further on. This is the coaster I use. Now, I want to stress that this isn't quite a fanboy thing. It's probably the closest thing I am a fanboy of, to be honest with you. The Nobodies, not Kingdom Hearts in general, just the Nobodies. But the reason why is because it speaks so personally to me as a person. It reminds me of who and what I am, and I think that's one of the reasons why most people tend to get fanboyish or fangirlish, or however you want to put it. I'm not being sexist here. In general about things is because it's something that really speaks to them and really highlights part of them to themselves, and they can actually be like, aha. And I mentioned this here last. Again, this is very serious because I want to explain why this series means so much to me in a nutshell, which is what this whole video has been about. But also try to elaborate that. Well, I know I'm not alone in this feeling. I know that there are several people out there who have similar thoughts or processes or are in a similar state, and who could really get into the whole heartless nobody thing. And I just wanted to share that, I guess. No real reason for it, to be honest with you, other than sharing it with you guys, my audience. You know me, trying to be personable. And I think I'm finally out of things to talk about. Oh my god. But for those of you who are wondering, well, I guess I shouldn't say that because I'm doing this video a little bit in advance. I haven't actually done my Revelations video yet when I'm doing this, but I plan on putting that up before I do this. One of the things I would like to do is really hammer out the Kingdom Hearts series in one block. So this video, whenever I put this up, may be a little bit of a break from this point until I actually put up my first, my Kingdom Hearts 1 video and then 2 and so forth. Oh, right, one last thing. I'll probably mention this in the comments because I doubt any of you are going to watch this all the way to this point. I will be doing the series in production order, not in chronological order, and the reason why is because so many of the revelations and plot points and innovations of the games follow production order rather than plot order. It is very clear that they were designed to be played in production order, if you follow me. And that's the order I recommend anybody else who's either getting into the series or still going through the series. Birth by Sleep is the first, chronologically speaking, but so many of the things within Birth by Sleep either have less impact or no impact, or don't really make any sense unless you've already played all the games prior to that, if you follow me. One other caveat I want to add here. In this whole series, there is one game I have never played without cheating because I hate the gameplay with every fiber of my being, and that is Chain of Memories. I tried to get through the GBA version and failed, and when the PS2 version came out, which is vastly superior, I might add, yeah, I tried that one too and finally gave up and just pulled out the Game Shark or whatever I have. It's not a Game Shark, it's a code breaker. and said, look, here, cheat, go, please. Because that game was incredibly poorly designed from a gameplay perspective, and I don't know anybody, personally, and I know several people who have played that game who actually like that game, and that is a caveat I have to mention. So, I'll talk about that more when I actually get to Chain of Memories, but I just thought I'd mention that here for anybody who's looking at this and saying, I gotta get me this series. If you're going to get Chain of Memories, be warned. I know several people who wish they had just YouTubed it, basically, because playing the gameplay of that one doesn't really add to that, unlike the other ones. Finally done. I'm going to talk to you guys later.